In this video, we'll walk through the creation of an entire character rig, beginning to end, and we'll use as the example the T-Rex here. First of all, let's just have a quick look at him here in Modeler. We can see that I've done some weight maps for him. Now, because he is just a skeleton, he doesn't need any kind of smooth weights. There's no kind of complex weighting needed. He's not a particularly organic deformer. As such, you can see that we have weight maps like this. There's the left thigh there and the main body of the left leg. The area that would be the same as the foot there on a humanoid character, the tarsal bones. We can see that for some parts, such as the actual digits here, I haven't individually weighted each separate bone. Maybe you would wish to, maybe not, but as you can see, I have them there like that. They can just deform more or less as an organic unit, not entirely accurate, but it's close enough. And what we can also see is that I've got similar weighting set here, for instance, for the body, where whilst you could go in and do, much more careful weighting of every vertebra and the gastralia and other such similar parts, for the most part we should be pretty safe not so doing. So for the most part it is reasonably simple block solid weighting that we've got going on here for the individual parts or different areas. So we begin then, we select our Rex object, start up the body builder, we'll give him a name. Rex seems like an appropriate name in this circumstance, and we will use the bones null style of rig for this example. We hit OK, and immediately we can see that the beginnings of our hierarchy are created for us there with our Rex mesh as part of the whole hierarchy there. First thing then, to get of course our controls being auto-sized for us, or at least partially, we shall want to scale up our rig root marker, and we'll just scale it until our hip there is residing more or less where we want the main root for the character to be, which I'm going to have pretty much right here at the central hip position, perhaps just a little way above it, somewhere like that. Now we could start here of course just by using a preset. There is a theropod preset which would give us the bulk of the rig that we're actually wanting for a creature of this nature, but it would somewhat defeat the purpose of the tutorial. So we can begin pretty much anywhere we like, and I'll start in this instance by adding the main spine to the character. I'm going to choose, let's say, 5 vertebrae for him here. I'm also going to think somewhat about the control method I will wish to use with him. Animating 5 bones on FK could be a little bit of a pain, so I think, given that he doesn't require an awful lot of complex movement in his spine, he's not really going to be wanting to form S-bends and the like, that I will use the handles method. A single handle I think will be fine for his spine, as I say, there's not an awful lot of complex deformation required. And I don't care about the number of spline controllers, since I won't be using spline control for this anyway. So we click Add Spine, just to add a single there, and we're going to parent it here to the main root. Click OK, our spine appears. So we can pop this into position. Let's think where his spine is going to begin to rotate from. I think somewhere around here-ish perhaps. I'll just rotate that down thusly, and I'll just shrink it down a little bit to get it more or less where the end of his spine is, approximately here. Okay, just start positioning the nulls like this to mark out into the actual spine section like this. You can choose to be careful or not. As I say, in this case we're just sort of deforming it as if it were a block, and I'm going to make sure that my handle for the spine is nice and easily accessible up here. I'll just quickly hide away the markers and the planes there so as I can grab these spine bones that I've created there, bring up their properties, and I'm going to stick them straight onto the body weight map like that. I'm also going to grab my root bone there, and I'm going to give it the hip weight map, and straight away we can see what that looks like. I'll hit rig fit, and there we go. We can see that those bones are in fact deforming our body reasonably well. I did say that I wanted to use the handle here, so I can just select any of those bones, any of those parts of the spine there, hit edit part, up comes our little spine attribute selector, and we'll switch him over to handles, set selected, hit OK, and there we go, our handle has appeared, and as we can see we now have this nice single controller for the whole body section like that. Next then, I'll lay in a neck for him, so I'm going to change over here to a neck. I think 4 vertebrae should be enough to cover this area. Again, I think I'm going to want to use handles for this, but in this case I'm going to put 2 handles so I can create some S-bending in the neck if desired. We'll add that, and we are going to choose as its parent, of course, the last spine bone there, so the spine 1-5. Our neck has appeared in an unusual place, but never mind, that's fine. We can just pop it there where we are wanting it, rotate it, stretch it out there, more or less, and just position these nulls here into the neck geometry thusly. There are my 2 handle positions, which I'll make sure are nice and clean there. I'm just going to grab a head as well, since he's going to need one of those. Add a single head, which will of course become a child of the neck 1-4. OK, that, our head appears. Pop that on point like this. Rotate it down this way to point down the head geometry. Get the end of the head there. Pull it out like this. This would be my head world space controller, which I want to float above his head because it's just easier, more accessible. And at this point I'm also just going to add on his jaw, so we'll add a jaw, child of the head there, OK, that, jaw appears, pop that on the rotation point, let's say somewhere around here, again just rotate it into position there, take out the end marker, let's just hide marks and planes so I can easily see the bones there. At this point I'll just grab and give them their weight. So neck for the neck, head for the head, and the jaw for the jaw. Also grab the neck joint there, and I'm going to edit part and set that to handles as well. I'll also grab the head, do an edit part, and I'll set that fellow to world space, set selected, OK, and let's have a look at it. We'll hit rig fit and see what we've got. OK, so there's our world space controller for the head. You can see, of course, that when the head twists like this on its bank, the neck is also going along. You can actually see the handle controllers here because, of course, the neck is under handle control. They have been bound into this system, and we're getting this nice distributed twist down the neck bones there. We can, of course, still pose the neck like this on its heading and pitch, and we've got the 2 handles there that let us get the different curves into the neck as we might desire, and of course the head stays nice and level as per the world space controller, and of course that also happens when we are flexing around the body like this, and you can see that we get the counter twist. If we were twisting the body there on bank, the neck is counter twisting to meet the head properly, so everything is as it should be. Next, since I've been taking care of this whole section, I may as well just do the tail now. So back to the spines tab, I'm going to choose a tail. In this case I'm going to go for quite a number of vertebrae, so let's say 12. And I'm not entirely sure how I might want to control this, perhaps handles. If I do go with handles, I think 3 would be a good number, but I might want to try a spline later, so I'm going to leave myself 4 spline controllers. We'll add a single one of those, and it's going to be a child of the main root here. There we go, there's our tail system there, so I'll just sort of plop that here and just scale it out. It's probably a bit crazy if I scale it out so big, so I'm going to go to the extra effort of actually positioning all of these things out in space like this. So this guy can go here, and I'll move the tip out to the end just like that, rotate that point to get it on point like this, and then just start spacing these nulls along the length of the tail geometry to try and get a good fit, a good spacing of the individual pivot points along the length of the tail. In case you're interested in a case like this, it might be worth noting that T-Rexes actually have a stiffened tail as you go further down the length of it. The maximum flexibility is here at the base. As you get right down to the end, its tail is almost completely rigid, or at least it would have been in real life. So I prefer quite a tight spacing here, perhaps at the base, and a more spaced out spacing as we go further down the length of it. But of course, setting up your own characters, the choice is entirely yours, and I'll just position these control points for the handles out here like so. Again, I'm just going to make sure I've got all of the bones there for the tail and give them the appropriate weight map like this. Just do a quick rig fit and we can see that the tail is in fact functioning just so. We can have a look at it in spline mode if we like. I could go to handles. I'm going to go straight to spline here, set selected. There we go, we get our 4 spline control points, so perhaps that's the control method that we're desiring for our tail. Maybe not, but we can of course play around with that later at our leisure. We shall work next on the limbs, and I'm going to start with the arms here. So we come over to the arms tab. I'm not going to bother adding a shoulder girdle in this instance. You could do, and of course there would be some mobility at the shoulder, but I'm just going to go for a rotation on point at the actual shoulder joint itself here and forget about the whole girdle collarbone area, because it's a little trickier on a skeleton type character like this, and also of course not completely necessary on this guy. So I have the arm chosen. I'm going to by default add a single finger to begin with. Now if we take a close look at his fingers here, we can see that he has different numbers of bones in each finger. We can see that this first finger, finger 1, is just 2 bones, whereas the second one is 3 bones. So I'm going to begin by adding just a single default finger to the arm with 2 phalanges, 2 joints in it, and I will add a pair, and these are going to be children of, well, the last spine joint, the spine 1-5 there. We hit OK, and there's our arm or arms created over there. Let's just pop them down into position. As we can see, they're rather large, or more specifically, they are roughly to scale for the size of the rig that we have created here, but poor old T-Rex has tiny little arms, so I'm just going to initially put those at the top point, or if you prefer, the proximal end of the humerus bone just there. Okay, I'm going to rotate these to come round to point directly along the line of the arm thusly. I'm just going to shrink like this, and I'll just turn it something like that just for ease. As you can see, initially the bones aren't shrinking in line, of course they're just following the markers, but if you find that a little confusing, then you can just do a quick rig fit, which will of course size the bones for you, and then we can go straight back into fitting mode like that. That helps it to be a little more visually obvious what is where. There we go. I'll line the point of the wrist up, which desires to be somewhere here. I'm going to twist that through 90, or rather negative 90 as it needs to be here on the pitch, just so as it is flat, oriented, as you can see the plane marker for the hand there, thus. And I'm just going to put the elbow into position like this. Now the hand, of course, we have a hand bone here. T-Rex doesn't really have a hand, he just has the fingers almost attaching directly to the wrist, or at least he does in this model. So I'm going to, at this point, whilst I remember, take the hand bone there and set it to 0% strength, because we won't actually use it at any point, and I'm going to make sure that I do the same thing on both the left and right hand sides, just like this. I can also, at this point, I might as well just grab the main arm bones there, and I'm going to give those their appropriate weight maps of arm and forearm here. You'll notice, of course, that I don't have separate left and right side weight maps because they're not close enough that the bones are going to pull on the opposing side geometry in this instance. So we'll position this finger in. I'm just going to get the finger group root marker there, and I'll just stick it somewhere here. Is quite honestly probably fine. And I'll take this finger first joint and pop it just there. Remember, of course, we're looking at this 2 bone finger here. We can scale it up a bit for ease if we like. Come down to the second joint. Let's position that just there. Rotate it down, get its end or tip marker, move it out to the end of his little claw, or rather large claw in all fairness, just there. Come back up to the root of that finger again, and we can just position it correctly in front view like this, and we can also see that actually the geometry there is somewhat on a bit of a twist, which is perfectly fine. So we'll go to rotate this in just like that, get it nicely in line. Fingers, toes like this, you know, they can be just a little fiddly, of course, getting things to just line up precisely, but it is easy enough, and of course there is ample control there to do it. If you do get a bit stuck, you can always switch between local and parent and world axis rotation or position modes should you find the need to do so. There we are, that all looks good, and so just in keeping with what I've been up to, I'm going to also grab these bones for the finger there and give them their appropriate weight maps. In this case, this is the finger digit 1. Again, I didn't do actually separate weight maps for the 2 bones of the digit here, so both of these bones in each finger get the same weight map there, FD1, finger digit 1. I shall now move on to adding the second finger here, so I'm going to come over to the digits tab. I'm adding a finger, that's good. I want 3 phalanges, yes I do. And I'm going to be adding just a single digit, but I'm going to be adding a pair. So click on pairs there. And because we already have a finger group that's been created when we created the arm there, then I'm going to choose the left finger group root 1 here as the parent. And of course, because I'm adding a pair, that will add across the 2 sides. And so I get a left hand side added over here to the left hand. And we can see, similarly, I have a right one that's been added correctly there for us. So, much the same as we just did, let's get this and position it into our second finger here. Just get those markers and pop one there, pop the other one here, rotate it down like that and bring the tip marker out somewhat like this. Again, go into the frontal view and just make sure that we are lined up nicely with the digit 3-dimensionally like this, and that looks pretty good as is to me. Again, I'll just do those bone weights, so I'm grabbing the 3-digit bones here for both the left and right hand sides, grab their properties, and they are going to be the finger digit 2. We'll give this a look. Let's hit rig fit. You can see what we have. Okay, there's, yeah, brilliant. So we've got the arm working there, and there's his forearm turning like this. And if we grab the finger bones here, yeah, we can see that they are functioning just nicely. For the fingers, since they don't do an awful lot, there's not an awful lot of, you know, mobility in T-Rex fingers here. They don't need to do anything particularly complicated. Maybe if this were a cartoon Rex or something, but in this case not. So I'm going to just select any one of the old finger bones there, go to edit part, and I'm going to set these to FK digit, hit set all, so that will just do all of the fingers there. And what we now get, of course, is the ability to just grab the first digit of any hand, or any finger rather, the first phalanx I should say of any finger, and we see that that operates the entire finger for us like that, and that's been set up nicely for both the left and right hand side digits. Wonderful. With all that done then, the only part left to do are the legs and feet. So we'll pop on over to the legs tab. The T-Rex here has a digitigrade leg, so we'll select that from the anatomy drop down. I'm not initially going to add any default toes. I'll explain why in a brief moment, and so with that I'm just going to click add pair. The legs are children of the main root, and there we go, our legs are added in for us, so we can start positioning them. I can get this nice and round on the point of the hip rotation there, and we can just start positioning the legs and their pivot points like this. So we have the knee and ankle there, of course, and the toe point will be here at the end of the metatarsals. Foot sole, of course, we bring down to the base flat position there. I'll just move it forward somewhere under the main foot like this. For a character such as this, the tip and edge rotation points of the foot might not be so important, but it always pays to have a go. You never know what sort of effect you might get out of it. Just to get the inner and outer edges there, I want to make sure that I've got the legs nicely in line there. So I can get, let's just put it right to the sort of outer bounds of the toes there, more or less like that. Our actual IK reverse foot controller is nice and free, and that looks pretty good. So I'll go through and I'll weight the legs, and because these are close together, we can see that I do in fact have left and right hand side weight maps for them there. Now when we get onto the toe bone, the main toe bone here, of course, you know, in something like a humanoid that's perhaps wearing shoes, then you just have this single piece toe. Of course, here in the Rex, it isn't going to make a difference. Just like the hand, we're not really going to actually use it to deform our mesh, so we'll set its strength to 0. And so then, with the weights set on both sides there, we can just have a little peek at what we've got, if we are so desiring. Of course, the legs default to IK manipulation, and we can see there that our legs are indeed working quite nicely. We can grab our reverse foot controls and see that we've got, of course, the leg press effect there, and of course the tip from the different points like this. So let's go back into fitting and let's get these toes added in. What we see, of course, in all theropods is that they have 4 toes, and toe number 1 is analogous to our own big toe, and that would be this fella here, but of course it's not connected down at the main base. In the case of the T-Rex, there's no weight put on it at all, it's just sort of dangling there. In the case of other dinosaurs like Velociraptor, then of course that's the toe that's got the big killing claw on it. So again, it's not used for walking on, and it's held in more or less this same position, except it's got more use. And in the case of something like a bird, then this first toe is actually migrated around the backside here to allow the foot to grip opposably so as it can perch on a branch. But this is why I did not add the toes initially. It's because I want this to be the first toe. I could have just added toes initially, or at least a toe, and started down here and let this be toe number 4. If one is getting technical, this is normally referred to as digit 1. The innermost is digit 1. So that's why I've gone the way that I have gone. And so what I'm going to do is come over to the digits tab. I'm going to choose to add a toe. This bone up here should be fixed. So again, it's only 2 phalanges. And I'm going to add a pair like that. And this first toe is an immediate child of the ankle, so I'll find my either left or right ankle there, hit OK, and there we go, a pair of toe 1s which are added to the left and right legs appropriately. So I'll just get these down into position, This is easier from the side, but it's a bit hidden, so I'll switch to just front face wireframe so that I can hopefully see more or less what I'm doing. And I want that to root pivot around there. Let's just turn this down like this, scale it up a bit just to make fitting a little quicker and easier. That pivot point will go somewhere around here, and of course we'll drag out the tip like this here, come back to my shaded so that I can see it a little better, and of course this is at a funny sort of angle in this model, but that's fine, we can correct for that. I'm going to use the local axis rotation mode there for it. I can just spin around, and of course I can use the plane there to make sure that I am in line with the direction that the toe will actually flex. Okay, so that's toe 1 taken care of. Now we'll take care of these other toes. Again, like the fingers, you can notice that there are a different number of phalanges in each one. So toe 2 here has 2, the middle has 3, and the outer, or toe 4, has 4 phalanges. Now, I do want these to be grouped, so I am going to create a toe group because I want to have the benefits of having them all linked and operate within a single group if I chose to use them as IK toes or what have you. Start out with just the 2 phalanx toe there, and I'm only going to add the 1, so add the pair. This shall become a child of the actual toes itself, so of course that main toes bone, which we are not here using. Even though we're not using it in a deformation sense, it still performs a mechanical function within the rig. And of course these individual toes come off of it, so to speak. So we'll add that there. And there it is, we'll just pop it over roughly like this. Of course I've got the group root marker selected there by default initially, so I'll just pop that. Since of course this group root marker is where the spline group root and the IK control group root will be, I do want to get it in a place where I can access it, and also of course where its point of rotation makes some kind of sense. And I'll just grab the toe 2 root there, and we'll just start to fashion that roughly into its position like that. In the meantime, I'm just going to add the other toes, so I'm going to add a 3 phalanx toe. Remember of course to uncheck group because I don't want to create a new group. So of course I now add a pair of those, and I choose the toe group root as the parent. Click OK. There we go, that's my toe number 3 added like that. I'll just size him up a little bit as well. In fact, I'll size him up the most. And then we're going to add a 4 phalanx toe, again single pair, and a child of that same toe group root. And there we go, there's that guy. Now all that remains is just the slightly fiddly business of getting these toes into position correctly inside the mesh, which of course isn't especially difficult, just a little bit fiddly, making sure that they are of course all pivoting from the correct points and that they are positioned into the mesh just so, and of course that their planes are oriented correctly as per the direction that the toe itself is actually bending and flexing. So a little bit of fiddly work to get these right, but perfectly doable. You of course don't get such fine control over movements when you are operating in perspective view like this. Things tend to jump around a large amount. Hence one way that I tend to do this when it's difficult to actually see from an orthogonal view, where you need to get things in the mesh, is just to use a split viewport like this, as that means I can spin around here in perspective view but still get the fine detailed little positions that I need from an orthogonal viewport like this. So there we go, get that guy in like that. and we can see that I've got him pretty much dead bang where I want him. I just need to take his tip out to the end of the toe, like that. So there we go, as if by magic, and a wee bit of fiddly placement later, I've got all of the toes positioned in nicely like that. So I'll just do the weights for them. Again, I'm going to hide the markers and the planes here. Again, because they are so close to one another, and in the case of toe 2 there are overlapping, I do have separate left and right hand side weight maps. So that's the left digit 1 up there. This here would be the left digit 2. The left digit 3, I'm sure you're getting the pattern by now. The same there for the right side, and we can hit rig fit. And there we go, our character rig is done, and we can see that, yup, our toes are all coming along there now as well. And of course, if we select the bones, then we can flex them, and yup, our toes are indeed working. All that remains is to choose a control system for this foot. Then the regular foot control leaves a little bit to be desired. It's not terrible. This works well for a humanoid biped, but for something like this, it's less than ideal. We can have a little look at IK, so let's go to edit part, and we'll set the digits here to just be IK, and we'll do a set all. So there we go, that leaves our toes now on IK control, and that's reasonable. You can see that they're trying to do a reach there, and of course if we use the IK actual control, then we do have this nice IK on point control there for those toes. That could be ideal. This might be just what you want to use, and as an animation control you might find that this is perfectly lovely and wonderful to work with. You can see that you get the bend and flex from the IK toes like that. Personally, for this kind of character, I really like the spline based toes. So I'll just select any of the bones there, edit part again, come over to spline, set all, OK. And we see the difference here. We get this drag of the toes where they really peel off the ground and they spread out over it as well on the downstroke there, which I find is much more natural for this kind of creature and is a better aid to animation, because doing this kind of complicated toe animation on a creature like this can be very time consuming, and this makes it very nice and quick. It is of course a bit rubbish up here on digit number 1, on toe number 1. So quite frankly, for that toe I prefer to just use what we used on the fingers, FK digit. So select FK digit and just set selected this time. And so now, whilst the main toes that are in ground contact are operating on spline, this toe, should we wish to use it, can just be used from the single digit control like that. And there we go. We are done. Our rig is complete. We can see that the whole guy works really nicely here, and everything is as we want it to be. We can do any tidy ups at this point. Perhaps if things like, these toe points for the tip toe and heel weren't desired, we could hide, lock those, what have you. These toe bones, these main toe bones, which we aren't actually going to be using, they might be a bit of a visual distraction. So the easiest thing to do with those is to bring up their properties and just shrink them down to something pathetically tiny like 0.1 millimeters, something of that nature. And so there it is. In very short amount of time, we've got a highly functional, very easy, quick and fun to animate T-Rex rig, which of course would have taken us a long time to build manually from scratch. We've been able to work through different control options, the spline, the handles, the IK or spline for toes, and things of that nature. And there we have it, the simplicity, the ease and the power of building a full character rig using the RHiggit Body Builder.